Happy to be back in the NewOrleans.Football studio after a little bit of time off. We talked to the guys about everything they saw at rookie minicamp, which not a ton of time out there. So we break down what we were at least able to see. We get into some Michael Thomas talk, even kicker and punter competition. We're going to break it all down on the show.
Enough to see to start hype beasting, though. We got some real football this week, so that's just always exciting to be back out there. Things are starting to be a little bit real. Next time we're out there, we're going to see Derek Carr and everybody else. So that's coming up too. So yeah, a lot of good stuff coming up on the show. We are presented by PJ's Coffee, the best coffee in all of America, if you ask me. And we are coming to you from the Better Call BADEAUX podcast studio. If you are out and about, make sure you go check out PJ's. We're going to have a show coming up. They got a new store at 2600 Airline Drive. I was in there over the weekend. Got the iced vanilla latte. Beautiful store, beautiful place, beautiful product. Go check them out. And if you need legal help with any of the following: car wrecks, offshore injuries, 18-wheeler collisions, Maritime Jones Act, hurricane and storm claims, you better call BADEAUX at 504-323-7777 or 985-303-7777 for your free consultation and case review. And we are also sponsored by Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey. That is an 86 proof blend of American light whiskey, aged wheat bourbon, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries. It is not for the thin-skinned. Look for it in your favorite stores, bars, and restaurants. And make sure you check out Ideal Market, home of the freshest produce in the city. They do great things for the community, and they are always bringing the best quality food products at the best prices. The home of the largest variety of Hispanic and international foods you will find in the state, and a deli that surpasses many restaurants in quality. Also, if you need to cash a check, wire money, check them out. Their customer service department is like no other. And also, they just gave out some gift cards to our listeners. So shout out to them for that. Appreciate the support as always. And go check out Firehouse Subs, Veteran Boulevard location. Great people doing great stuff for the community. They have another store coming soon on the North Shore, so be on the lookout for that. All right, let's get into the show.
These guys were back on Airline Drive this past weekend for Saints rookie minicamp. Only got a really small portion this year. What was that about, guys? Let's get into how long were you out there and what were you able to see in this small portion of rookie minicamp on Saturday?
Long enough to get excited about being back out at work. It was great just to watch football players do football things. I don't know that we got massive insights into anything. It's kind of like a 40-minute viewing window. We got to see them to do individual drills, see how guys kind of carry themselves a little bit, how they move. As far as deep insights, I mean, that's still a long, long way off. But I saw enough things to get a little bit hype. We'll get into it. There's going to be a little bit of hype going on this show. All but, right. You know, it's the off season, and that's what it's for.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough when obviously there's no 11 on 11. I don't think they had enough players to do 11 on 11 in certain position groups. But there wasn't even one-on-ones and stuff like that, the real competitive stuff. So we get overhyped about things like one-on-ones and no pads, which will start by like next Tuesday, I think. But we didn't even have that. But to me, all of my biggest observations that stood out were physicality and athleticism that stood out. I mean, there's two guys that are sticking out right now. Brian Brzee, we were standing there talking in the parking lot afterward. When was the last time a defensive tackle looked like that and moved like that? And I really had a hard time thinking, like, I was coming up with almost like Teron Armstead as a comp for him, like just like that size and that movement ability. And Kendry Miller, who wasn't even doing anything except for doing laps with a trainer. We were just like, oh, we can't wait to see him in pads and see what he looks like when he moves, because he's a big dude.
Let's bring the fans into it a little bit. We get the call from whoever the PR guy is. We walk across the street. We go through the gate. What's the first thing you see? It's warm-ups, and then let's get into the rest of it.
Yeah, it's stretch in the indoor facility, and it was a little bit weird at this camp because normally the music is blasting. There's no music going on. You just hear people instructing the players on how to stretch. They are stretching like they're trying to make an impression on somebody. Normally, it's like the laziest thing in the world. Some guys are going through it. Some guys aren't. Like, they were all stretching like, I'm going to show coach that I can, like, that I'm more flexible than everybody else. So it was a little bit weird. But, yeah, they do that, and then they go outside and they go into their positional drills. And it's receivers running through cones, making sure that they're getting the right, dip on a turn and all this stuff. DBs working on dropbacks, linebackers doing their things. One end of the field, the defensive ends and defensive tackles are in two different groups, kind of going through drills with their coaches. One thing that was interesting to me, Brian Young, their pass rush specialist, was working with the DTs instead of the DNs. Todd Grantham was with the DNs. Normally, Brian Young's kind of more with the edge guys. So some technique swapping, I guess, going on there a little bit. And then, yeah, it's just everybody kind of going through their own thing. But it was definitely a little bit of a different vibe with no music. It kind of feels like a party out there sometimes. And sometimes the playlists are themed. Often the playlists are themed. So that's usually a thing of practice. Not at rookie camp, though.
Yeah, that was going to be my biggest question was what is the playlist? Because we know what Sean has typically liked at practice and then got a little taste of DA last year at training camp. Was there any differences besides just the music?
Well, first of all, that's a Fred McAfee. We got to get him on the show one day. Fred McAfee, who's been around forever. Fast Freddy, Hall of Famer, was on the team for a long time and secretly in charge of music. You know, some of those behind the scenes details that you don't always know. And sometimes he goes off script. But no, I mean, yeah, I mean, the thing that stands out most when you're at rookie minicamp is just how small the group is. It's going to be pretty eye opening. And, you know, here's the first thing we do that Nick left off the list is, and now that we are a team together at NewOrleans.Football, Nick's got usually the binoculars, I've got the pen and the roster, and we do attendance. It was a very quick attendance. When we have 90 players out there next week, attendance will take a little longer.
And a lot of new faces outside of just the rookies, a lot of new faces on the coaching staff. Where did you see DA kind of hanging out with some of these new coaches? And maybe was he in a little bit of a different role than he was in last year as the head coach?
So this was maybe the most fascinating takeaway to me was just seeing how the defensive coaching staff operated. Now, they got so much depth on that staff that these groups, they're broken up almost into like groups of 2 and 3 players. Like the defensive back, Sterling Moore is working with one group. Joe Woods, the new defensive coordinator, had another group. Marcus Robertson was with another group of DB. So like they're all getting very personalized one-on-one coaching. And I think that's going to help with young players. And I mentioned the D-line, they're in 2 groups. So it was just kind of like really spread out, really specialized. And then DA was kind of, for most of the practice, we were out there over watching the offense, kind of seeing what was going on over there. So it seems like he already trusts his coaching staff already. I hear they're going to go away next week on a retreat for a coaching retreat. So it's a process, I think, right now of building up chemistry, but you can kind of see the vision for why he went after some of these guys. And Robertson in particular, he talked about how he coached Charles Woodson in Oakland and helped him make the transition to the different positions in the secondary. So he's somebody that they really, really like his ability as a coach to teach, to have that hands-on work with some of these guys. He was working most closely with Jordan Howden, the rookie they drafted. Howden was kind of moving all over, doing different things. He was playing deep some spots. He was in the slot some other. So it's going to be interesting just to see how that goes all year. But I can't see how that depth on the coaching staff would be anything but a benefit to this team.
And we mentioned Brian Brzee, just the size he brings and his mobility. Was there any other surprises, maybe good or bad?
Not really surprises. I mean, the easiest guy to watch in practice was Jay Cainer. And at one point when, because he's a quarterback, when they brought out the net with the 3 squares, it was like, you can just see a wave of people. Oh, here's something I can chart and make observations on. But there were 2 quarterbacks out there. And, you know, it'll be a lot more interesting to watch Cainer go behind Derek Carr and Jameis Winston. But I mean, it did not feel like we were watching a rookie out there. I mean, you could hear his voice. You could see him kind of moving fluidly, moving with purpose, moving with intent. Most of his throws looked on time, fluid. A couple misses deep, but that's also trying to get timing down with someone like Cy Barnett down the field, who's a undrafted receiver from Assumption College or whatever. But I talked to Pete Carmichael after practice for a long time. We talked to DA after practice, and without question, that was one of their top observations is the guy carries himself like a pro. And we mentioned this, but it really is worth emphasizing. They went up and drafted a quarterback who their coaching staff spent coaching all week at the Senior Bowl. Ronald Curry was the offensive coordinator. They also had the quarterback's coach for that team. And so they spent a whole week watching this guy practice, watching how this guy works, and came away so impressed by that. I mean, there's no coincidence whatsoever that that's the quarterback they went up and got. They love the way this guy carries himself and operates, and you can see that even in a small glimpse, I think.
He throws a tight pass, too. Like, the juxtaposition between him and Frost, like, it made Cainer really kind of stand out. Like, his throwing motion's really tight. I think the mechanics are really good. The ball comes out of his hand great. He was I don't want to use the word impressive, but for day one, it was a good first impression.
And of course, you're only out there, I think to emphasize this, it's a small portion. We're only out there on Saturday. There were several other practices that we were not physically there for, but based on just your relationship with some of the coaches and guys on the staff, what are they liking? What did they see from this past weekend?
I think there's going to be real competition at kicker. Like
Really?
they like these guys they have in there. DA mentioned it just even on the record, just that they have 3 guys and they think they're going to be competition for Will Lutz. Blake Groupie from I'm probably saying his name wrong.
Yeah, no, it is Groupie.
He's going to end up an NFL kicker, and I probably just disrespected him.
It is Groupie. It is officially Groupie.
But word is he's got a huge leg, and he really, really impressed people this week with some of the stuff he was able to do. So I think that's going to be super fascinating moving forward. Brian Brzee impressed people. That was a good first impression. So I think there's a handful of people that they feel good about, after this first week of practice.
Seems to be some competition, not only at kicker, but punter too, right, Mike?
Yeah. I mean, I think both are real competitions. I mean, Blake Gillikin had a better than possibly could have been imagined sort of redshirt freshman year, and then really kind of a sophomore slump last year. And so he's really got to prove it against a guy who was pretty highly rated. The punter they brought in was, I think, on every like pre-draft list that I could see, he was kind of a top 5 punting prospect. And so they brought in, and a guy who is going to get noticed. It's, he was already at Miami making headlines for being such a big personality. He's got the tattoos, he's got the mullet, he's from, played Australian football or whatever. And so they are, whether they're doing it, Nick said this a couple times last year, Sean Payton used to, if a kicker missed some kicks, he'd bring in 6 kickers.
Yep.
If they're trying to get Blake Gillikin's attention, they couldn't have picked a better punter to get someone's attention. So both Will Lutz and Blake Gillikin are going to have to compete to prove that last year was both of their worst NFL seasons. Blake Gillikin's been here for 2, but it was also Will Lutz's worst season. They're going to have to prove that those bounce back years are on the way.
My favorite thing about those kicker workouts is like they're so secretive about everything. You don't see anything they do. They hide everything they do. They'll make us walk a mile out to practice if someone's like trying out. But if a kicker missed a kick, all 5 kickers that came in to work out would be sitting in the locker room during the open availability, just waiting to get called up to find out their fate, so that we would see each one, ask them who they are, and then it would just send a statement to the kicker. Like they were going to face shame and embarrassment for missing a kick, and Sean was going to make them feel every moment of it.
Well, and we're going to get into a little bit of a deeper dive with Will Lutz coming up on one of these episodes. But why has there been so much competition and so much noise around who will be the kicker for the Saints? Go a little deeper into what's been going on with Will Lutz and maybe some of the contract talks.
Yeah, so Will had the injury. He came back from it, and I think it was just a little bit slow last year, and I think it took him a little bit of time. I kind of fully expect him to bounce back and lock in, but there seems to be an admission from even his side, taking a pay cut this year to stay on the team. I'm going to be interested to hear why he did that and kind of what led to it. But I think he knows that he needs to be just a little bit sharper. Here's the thing, though, like with kickers, I don't think Will had like a terrible season. Right. If you make 3 more kicks, you're right back on the league average. The sample size is so small that one bad day can really just send everything a little bit askew. So he's been so consistent. I think he's going to lock back in.
Yeah, and he missed 8 kicks. His bad year is missing 8 kicks, and one of them was probably his best kick. The 62-yarder, 61.5-yarder that would have beat the Vikings in London.
Yeah, we'll get more insight in that. One of the things that I was hearing after rookie minicamp, and hate to put a knock on a guy this early, but that Nick Anderson truly did show just how undersized he is in the linebacker room. What was your observation in practice?
Yeah, that's true. It's one of the first things Nick said to me while we were walking around the tunnel too. I mean, you notice it, and that's what he's got to compete against. And he has to compete against that with any of the 32 teams he would play for in the NFL, but he really has to combat that with the Saints, where size means so much to this team. But look, we saw them make an exception with Quan Alexander a couple years ago. So they proved they're willing to make an exception for the right player, but he's got his work cut out for him, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and he's definitely smaller than Quan, too, for sure. But I thought he moved well. He drops well. He's fast. I just think that he's a really, really long shot, just kind of given the size and everything. And if you're looking at that group, Anthony Orji was a guy that stood out and had a good camp, or a good day, rather. Highly paid undrafted player. So I think just the competition is even steep in that group. And if I was circling one, I would have to circle Orji right now.
So we talked about Brian Brzee. We talked about Jay Cainer. What about Isaiah Foskey?
He's another one who, again, we're going so much with defensive linemen. We're going by how do they look?
I know, right?
How do they look? We don't even get to see them stand up against an offensive lineman, but he looks long and lean. He's got like that basketball player build. So obviously fits that Saints prototype, but even kind of a little longer and leaner than some of the other ones looked. I guess maybe Marcus Davenport. I'm trying to think back to what he looked about the first time we saw him, because he got bigger and bigger as we go, and that's what's going to happen with Foskey too. But Foskey's enthusiasm, just, we talked to him for a little bit too. He is a guy that's not coming in timid. He's not coming in like he needs to feel his footing. He's a pretty confident guy who's played at a high level against high level competition. So I think that could serve him well hitting the ground running.
Somebody else who's not shy, Kendrick Miller, and he looked huge in a lot of those pictures on the field.
Unbelievable. He has the biggest feet I've ever seen in my life. And I actually asked him about his feet, and I guess he mentioned this after the draft too, because his balance is insane when you watch him play. People bounce off him, and he says that it's the big feet that he gets a great plant in the ground. I was looking at his feet man, he's going to get some shoelace tackles throughout the season. People are just going to grab the foot, but he sees it as a benefit. But he ran well. I mean, that's all we saw him do. We saw him run across the backside. He looked good running. Says he's going to be ready for training camp, but absolutely just he looks big on film, but in person, he is a massive person. And it is just so interesting because I would not classify him as a power back, but he looks like a power back. So I'm excited to see him get running. He had asked him about his route running and just was so how are you figuring this out? What are you doing? He's like, well, I've been watching Alvin Kamara and I think I can do everything he does. So all right. We'll see.
Confidence.
We'll see.
I've heard 3 interviews with him now. Confidence is check. We've got that covered.
He doesn't even say it crazy though either. Yeah. It's just I've been watching Alvin. I can do everything he does. Yeah. Oh, all right.
Yeah, we love that competitiveness going into camp. Absolutely. Take it to the veteran. Another guy too, A.T. Perry. How did he look kind of sizing up against some of these other wide receivers in drills?
Yeah, I mean, again, receivers is a position where we could chart.
Right.
And so what did we see? I probably saw him catch 9 passes and drop 1, and it's a drop, but what does that really mean until we see 4, 5, 6 practices and we see if it's a continuing occurrence? But it was something that was listed as a knock on him. But compared to the other guys, compared to Cy Barnett, compared to Shaq Davis, he way more fluid, way more his routes were on point. His where the quarterback was thrown and where he was catching it, other guys back of the head, other guys looking for it in the air. I saw a little bit more polish every time they were thrown to him, except for the 1 drop. So, but again, so hard to make a full judgment and not to be a knock on those other guys. But mostly I was kind of watching Cainer. And I was like, oh, that was a good one. And then sometimes I realized, oh, that was 17 again. And then, oh, they were off. I don't know if it was the quarterback or the receiver. It was someone else.
I will say, a guy that's had 17 concentration drops in 2 years, you don't want to see a concentration drop within 10 passes. That's something. Yeah. And then they were doing this drill where they kind of went through they go through the cones and they got to run it a certain way and they got to duck under a pad and everything. And he messed it up 3 times in a row. They had to correct him on it. So he had to do that. I think he started out slow and then he picked it up as it went on. But there were things that I really liked about him and then things that are okay, I'm kind of starting to maybe understand the draft stock being a little bit different. 1 practice, so you don't want to make too much of it. But there were definitely a few red marks, I think, within the 30 minutes, probably more so than a lot of the other guys out there. Another wide receiver, though, that I thought did look good within that, Shaq Davis, the UDFA, big guy, really, really raw, but he does some things well, too. He was someone that stood out to me a little bit.
I'll tell you what, credit to Nick. When we were talking in the undrafted Camp Beast segment about how the person who's been here before always looks like he's running laps around everyone else. Yeah. Go on, Baker. Looks like a 12-year pro out there, showing everybody, like the Matthew McConaughey character in Dazed and Confused. He's been in high school for 11 years or something like that.
Yeah, he looks smooth.
We need to get a picture one of these days of this chart when you're out there, what these notes look like, because it sounds like the wide receivers are getting.
It looks. I mean, it's just heavy. It's a lot of. It's just a. I'll tweet it. It one day. Yeah, no one's gonna be able to read it. It's just a bunch of hieroglyphics and
right.
Yeah.
We'll put that out there. And then to close this up on all the draft picks, Nick Saldivari, what kind of drills were they putting him through? Because I know they want to see him in that versatile role, that's somebody who can play up and down the offensive line, right?
They had him at, I believe, right guard the whole time. So yeah, that's kind of where he was working out. Was it right guard? It was one of the guard positions. He was at one of the guard spots the whole entire time. And I think he moves well. I like talking to him more than like he just seems really, really smart. He gets it. The things he talks about are just kind of high level. He sounds like a veteran player. A lot of these guys we talk to him, they seem nervous. They're catching up. They're trying to figure things out. Like Nick talks like he's been there. He's coming from Old Dominion too. Like he should have a steeper learning curve. Like if he's going through it, like he's hiding it really well. He said he likes Doug Marrone, just kind of how he tears him down, hard coaching and all that stuff. So, I mean, if that's what he likes, he is definitely in the right place because nobody coaches harder than Doug Marrone. So I'm impressed by him, just more so just off the field than even on the field.
I can't believe we did this again. We're leaving off Jordan Howden, and I think this has kind of been in every media circle. It's, what do we know about this safety? Did we learn anything new about him at all at rookie minicamp?
Well, as Nick mentioned, already we saw him moving around and playing all those different positions, and I think that's his ticket. It's funny, we were talking about the safety depth, I think just conversationally, and when we were talking about how thin it gets and do they need to bring back PJ Williams? Because who's going to be, Jonathan Abrams, kind of the box safety. We don't know for sure if Lonnie Johnson Jr. is going to play everywhere or if they picture him being a deep safety. But already seeing them explore Howden's versatility, they love that. And if you are not one of the top 5 defensive backs on the depth chart, you better play several different positions if you want to get in dime packages.
Yeah, I'll take this a step further. Like, I think he has a chance to make that like back end safety competition legit. Yeah. Like, I think he has a chance of doing that. He moved well. He looked good. I think that we've all kind of been sleeping on him a little bit. I think we need to pay a lot more attention.
I think too, outside of just what you guys were able to see in rookie minicamp, the talks with Mickey Loomis and Dennis Allen, I think were very productive over the last few days, especially learning about Michael Thomas and then removing hardware from his foot. Can you get into that a little bit and what they said his timeline looks like?
Well, yeah, we've heard Dennis Allen say that twice now, but I followed up with Mickey Loomis out at the golf tournament today just to make sure that doesn't mean something different than what they originally anticipated. Like when he had surgery in November, this is a natural follow-up to that surgery, and Mickey said yes, and Dennis Allen never expressed any concern. So I don't think it was like my rehab's not coming along and I need to get this removed to try. Like, I don't think it's that case. I think he was just trying to give us an update on his timetable. I do think it means we're probably not going to see him on the field already Tuesday at OTAs. I don't know that for sure. But the one thing that both Allen and Loomis both expressed was confidence that he's on the projected timetable that they've had for him all along, and that they're confident that that he can hit the ground running in training camp.
Yeah, OTAs are starting this Tuesday, and they'll run through the next few weeks. But I know there's a lot of optimism in front of the camera from DA and Mickey about this. I haven't necessarily heard a whole lot of optimism behind the scenes from some of the guys over there in Metairie. Is that kind of what you're getting? And I don't want to say it's pessimistic. It's just this has kind of been the thing with Michael Thomas is he going to be healthy for a full season? Is he not? Not necessarily a knock on him at all, just that unfortunately injuries have just been a part of his story in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's like, you're asking the wrong person, because there's like a handful of things that I truly believe in life. There's like God, just family, and then like Mike Thomas's ability to play football. Like these are like the tenets of my life. So I'm never gonna not believe, but I think that it's probably healthy to be a little bit cautious at this point. It's been multiple years. It just hasn't gone well. But I will never ever publicly, privately, anywhere say that like I don't believe in Mike Thomas's ability to play. Like it's gonna have to actually be all the way over before I'm just like, well, there's nothing left. So I do believe there's still something left. I think we saw it early last year. He just has to, I don't know how he does it, but like somehow he just has to avoid getting injured. But yeah, until we see it, I think in like week 8, I think you should still be like, well, if Mike can stay healthy the rest of the season. Week 15, well, if Mike can finish out these next few games.
Don't say that on Twitter, though. Don't say that on Twitter.
But it's fair.
For the mentions.
Yeah.
But
it's fair at this point. I mean, it's just you have to hedge it. You have to hedge it. And yeah, I think that we even see in their actions, the way they're building out the depth chart at wide receiver, they're hoping for the best, but they are prepared for Mike not playing. So they got another guy coming in today from Pittsburgh to try out. Like they're just going to keep building that depth at wide receiver. And if Mike plays, fantastic. And if he doesn't, you're ready for it.
They're signing him to that contract speaks volumes about some level. I mean, it's cautious optimism. But you had the chance to walk away, and they didn't walk away. I mean, they think they have that same belief Nick was just expressing.
And we've seen him doing all the right things, right? He got the early work with Chris Olave. We see him constantly pushing out that he is working and trying to build his body back. So I don't think there was ever an issue of effort. You know, you see just some things on Twitter and how fans feel. Look, Michael Thomas, if he can be on the field, he's going to be on the field. He's going to do everything in his power to be on the field. And I think fans should at least be excited that they're going to get a glimpse of that. I don't want to say they're going to see him the whole season.
Never, ever question his effort.
Effort is never in question.
There's no one who wants to be in that field. And now that Drew Brees isn't on the team, I don't know if there's a more competitive person on the entire roster. That's not why he hasn't been missing out of blowing anything off.
It's the worst fan take. Like, the worst fan take is that Mike doesn't care. Like, if you can't walk in a room and like you feel Mike's like passion and just intensity exuding before you even see him. Like, you can like feel his presence almost, like how hard he's into the game and everything. So people thinking that he doesn't want to play is like the dumbest, most insulting thing in the world.
Well, you see that Michael Jordan documentary that came out during COVID that everybody watched. I mean, it was hard not to think that it's the same mentality. Michael Thomas does have such a similar mentality.
I got dragged for tweeting this for like a month. Like, everybody was at home doing nothing. And I tweeted that it was a comp, and like I just got dragged by people from other places.
Though.
But
he really
it is. Yeah,
that's his mindset.
No question.
I hope at some point, if he's listening to this, that we can get some insight into how he thinks, how he prepares, what goes into all of that. But keep moving along. You got to talk to Mickey Loomis today, some of the players as well. Cam Jordan, they were out there for the Saints Hall of Fame golf tournament bright and early after practices this week with the rookies. OTAs coming up Tuesday. What was your takeaway?
Well, the one thing I was talking to Cam about, and this is probably me reading too much into this, but he, I think he was in Spain for about 8 months after the season. Does the math check out on that? It feels like he was, based on his social media activity. But he said as soon as he got back 2 weeks ago, Demario Davis was already in his ear, like, all right, you're back. We want to get the team together. And they were out at like NOLA Motorsports Speedway. He said they also went bowling. He said they went to Dave and Buster's. So it's like the team bonding with a good chunk of the defense. Maybe they've done that every year to a level that I'm not aware of, or maybe it's something that they want to do early this year. We talked a lot about how it felt like attendance was a little down in OTAs last year, how it felt like it was such a slow ramp up to the offseason. If that's a signal for just sort of the mindset of this team, we talked to Tyrann Mathieu about, he said he heard attendance was a little more up. I'd like to see that carrying over through OTAs and minicamp before I make a final judgment on what their approach is like, but that's good to hear.
Yeah, I think so. And it leaves a good impression on the defense, especially that we talked about this in several episodes. Just kind of a down year for them, even though the numbers didn't necessarily reflect it. Do you like hearing that they're getting together like this? Is this out of the norm for them?
I think increased chemistry can only help produce more turnovers.
Yeah.
And if people are just comfortable being together, they know how to talk to each other off the field. It's probably easier to talk to each other on the field. So this is definitely, I think, a step in the right direction, an admittance that maybe last year didn't go the way that they wanted it to go. So increased buy-in can only lead to better results for sure.
When you guys went live for the schedule coming out, a lot of people had things to say about the predictions. Nick, what was the worst take you saw from that? We're not going to name names. We're not going to send out Twitter handles or anything like that. But, man, these fans weren't happy with you.
Yeah, I mean, look, they aren't going to win 14 games.
Right.
So, I mean.
What?
If they do.
I would agree. I would agree with you, though.
Look, no one's going to, like, I'll be the happiest person in the world. When the fans are happy and they aren't, like, griping on Twitter or in the YouTube comments all the time, it's a much more fun job to have. When the team's winning, people are happy. They like our work more. So I want them to win every single game. I just don't think that they're gonna. I thought 10 wins was fair. And look, the thing I always say is, like, whatever I say my win total is, I think there's a 2-win variance each direction. So it could be 12 if everything goes right. It could be 8 if they have injuries like last year. So I think 10 is like a very reasonable place to set the line. There's a lot of stuff to prove. But I'm sorry. Like, I just can't get the 13, 14 wins.
Well, yeah, mine was, and what Nick went on Twitter, that was hilarious. He was like, I see we've already moved from the fire everybody to the how could you dare not predict 14-3 portion of the season. But here's and the one I got was, so we went through this. I'm sure you watched while we were trying to do the math, and like we're trying to go game by game and get them to 10-7. And we kept, like, I was like, can you go back and give them some more losses? I don't want them to be 8-4 at this point in the season. Their schedule seems really easy. Yeah. But I gave them a loss in the first game to the Tennessee Titans, who were just like the #1 seed a year ago in the AFC. And fans, like, two different fans are like, how could you give them a loss in that first game? And I go, I'm trying to give them 7. Okay, they're hard to find 7. I do think that they are going to lose, their share of games. But I don't think it's just, sometimes on Twitter you make the mistake of there are the angry fans who want to fire everybody. There are the people who get angry when you're optimistic, and they might be two different groups of people. But I genuinely know some of these live on the high wire fans. I have some in my family that have really changed their tune from now. That happens every offseason, 0-0. They've done nothing but add players, draft picks, and everything like that. But I think there is a genuine shift to optimism. Maybe it has to do with everybody recognizing that the rest of the NFC South is in rebuild mode, but I sense an optimism. Like it's kind of scary, It's kind of scary how much that has actually shifted.
I do have one very pessimistic takeaway from that segment. Brandon's math skills on that were just abysmal. That was just very poor.
What did he major in?
Hold on. Wait a minute.
Oh, we got the Brandon Mike over
y'all
there.
Continue to change y'all numbers.
You gotta be able to think on your feet.
I'm going through the games, and it's like, well, nah, I don't think I want this one. Well, no, they might lose this if it's 20 degrees outside. So I was keeping up with y'all, but y'all wasn't keeping up with yourself.
Oh. I think watch the tape. Watch the tape. Watch the tape.
Yeah, we gotta watch the tape on that. It was good that you could make a video.
Producing.
Look, I'm glad you could make a video, man.
We need to get a camera over there, because right now it just seems like the voice of God coming out of nowhere.
They're not taking your degree away. Don't worry, Brandon. They're not taking it away.
Well, we like hearing from you guys. We like bringing the fans in. We're going to continue to take questions on the members only podcast. And if you like what we've been doing with this new show, we're going to try and bring in some more players. We're excited about one in particular. Be on the lookout for that. Be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. We're bringing this to you for free. We appreciate PJ's Coffee for sponsoring this show. And if you like what we're doing, just keep tuning in with us. And remember, the guys are going to have a ton of analysis as we gear up and lead toward the season. Join us and join them on NewOrleans.Football, and we'll see you guys next time.
Hold up, one question. What are we wearing on Wednesday so that I can be part of the team?
Stop it.
I don't want to be the only one out of uniform.
I don't understand the wavelength we happen to be on. We don't talk before the show. We don't, as far as what we're wearing.
We haven't been going to Nola's Motorsports and Dave and Buster's and bowling to
because we don't need to. The chemistry's there. I don't know what's happening with Nick. But
you guys got to cut me in. I just want to be part of the team. I just feel so left out here.
We've done this every episode, but you'll just have to tune in next time to see what the color coordination is.